What precedes vision? In leadership settings, we always put vision as the top of the list, at the top of the list. Vision is the most potent weapon in the leader's arsenal. And I wanted to ask the question, what happens inside a leader that is so powerful that it eventually gives birth to a vision at a later point in time? And I was reading through the Old Testament book of Exodus. I came across the story of Moses, one of the great leaders in antiquity. And I believe I discovered the defining experience that forced Moses into leadership, whether he wanted to lead or not. I think it was his firestorm experience. Let me just refer to the account. If you brought a Bible, it's in Exodus chapter 2. Verse 11 says this: one day, after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were, and he watched them at their hard labor. While Moses is watching the hard labor, the daily oppression of his own people, he sees an Egyptian soldier, we think, beating, smashing the nose and spattering the blood of one of his fellow Hebrews. This is a Hebrew who's already being worked to the bone. And Moses got to a point, he just couldn't take it anymore. The sights and the sounds and the splattering blood was too much, and something snapped inside of him. Now fast forward a few frames to the famous burning bush story, which is recorded in Exodus 3. You all know it. Moses comes to a bush that's on fire. It just doesn't get consumed. Exodus 3, verse 7. Moses, get these words now. God, I have seen the misery of the people in Egypt. Seen the misery of the Israelites in Egypt. I have heard the sounds. I've heard them crying out. And I'm concerned about their suffering, and I'm going to rescue them. And I'm going to use you to do it. I think what's really happening here is God is saying, Moses, what you saw that day that made you so unbelievably angry, what you saw when the Egyptian guy was beating the living daylights out of that Hebrew slave, what you saw and heard when the two Hebrew guys were so frustrated and angry and hopeless about their situation that they started beating each other up, what you have been seeing, I have been seeing, I have been hearing, I have been watching, and I can't stand it anymore either. And I'm stirred in my spirit, and I'm going to do something from heaven, and I'm going to assign you to be my emissary on earth. And I'm choosing you in part because I see you're stirred in spirit about the same thing that's stirring me. I'm going to harness that internal firestorm of frustration that's raging in you. I'm going to harness that and use it in a positive way to set my people free. That furnace of frustration is going to forge leadership, mettle, and fortitude in you, and I'm going to use that. This is key to understanding leadership, in my humble opinion. God's heart and a human heart being aligned perfectly around what frustrates heaven and earth, what frustrates the character and nature of God, and what frustrates a potential leader to the point of absolute angst. Now,
we've got to make sure that our inside guts, all the way to the core, there's a genuine integrity, because you're going to reproduce you.
You lead without fear, because behind you always, behind me always, God is at work.
The clarity that says Jesus did not come to make us safe. Jesus came to make us brave.
You cast vision. That is, you paint a picture of the future that produces passion in people.